Zane had never imagined he'd be standing in the middle of an alien arena, with the eyes of an entire species watching his every move. And he definitely didn't expect to be challenged to a duel by an alien woman who was both intimidating and beautiful, her violet skin glowing softly under the twin moons of Clyra. This wasn't exactly the peaceful diplomatic mission he had signed up for. He had come to Clyra to represent humanity, to discuss trade agreements and exchange knowledge, not to fight for his life in front of a crowd of curious extraterrestrials. But as he stood there, facing the alien woman who had issued the challenge, he couldn't help but feel a strange sense of excitement mixed with nervousness. "You've been speaking highly of humans," the alien woman's voice rang out, smooth and melodic. "I want to see if you can back it up." Zane blinked, taken aback. The woman was tall, taller than him by at least a foot. Her long, silver hair cascaded down her back, and her striking yellow eyes were fixed on him with a sharp intensity. She wore simple but elegant armor that seemed to shimmer with an iridescent glow, her posture exuding confidence and authority. She was stunning, and in any other situation, he might have found her allure captivating. But now, with the crowd of aliens surrounding them in a large stone arena, her beauty was the last thing on his mind. "I'm sorry," Zane said, shaking his head in confusion. "Did you just say duel?" The alien woman's lips curled into a playful yet dangerous smile. "That's right, a duel. If you lose, you belong to me." Zane's stomach dropped. "What, you can't be serious?" "Oh, but I am," she said, her voice light but filled with an undeniable edge. "I challenge you, human. If you win, I'll let you go back to your peaceful little negotiations. If you lose, well, you'll be mine. That's the way it works here." Zane stared at her, his mind racing. He had come here as a diplomat, not a gladiator. What kind of backward planet was this, where duels were used to settle disagreements? But the crowd of Clyrans around the arena didn't seem to be questioning it. In fact, they seemed to expect it. They were murmuring excitedly, watching him closely. The air was thick with tension. The woman's smile widened, clearly enjoying the effect she had on him. "Do you accept, human?" Zane took a deep breath. There were a lot of things he didn't understand about this planet and its customs, but one thing was clear. Backing down would mean giving up everything he had worked for on this mission. He couldn't afford to let these aliens think humans were weak. He needed to prove that humans weren't to be underestimated. But did he have what it took? He glanced around at the crowd. They were all waiting, expecting him to make a decision. The arena was open, filled with the strange hum of alien energy. Zane had never fought before, not like this. He was a diplomat, not a warrior. But he had to do something. "All right," Zane said, surprising himself. He straightened his posture, squaring his shoulders. "I accept your challenge." A murmur rippled through the crowd. The alien woman's eyes glinted with something that looked like both amusement and approval. "Good," she said, her voice smooth. "You'll need every bit of courage you can muster." Zane stood in the center of the arena, trying to calm the nerves that had suddenly started racing through his body. He had never been in a situation like this before. How was he supposed to fight? He hadn't even trained for hand-to-hand combat, let alone deal with whatever strange abilities this alien woman possessed. The woman stepped forward, her steps graceful and sure. "We'll begin now," she said. "Remember, human, if you lose, you'll be mine. And that's a fate I'm sure you'll find far less exciting than you think." Zane clenched his fists. "We'll see about that," he muttered, trying to gather the courage he needed. He wasn't sure if it was confidence or sheer panic pushing him forward, but it didn't matter. He couldn't back down now. The duel began without warning. The woman, whose name he still didn't know, moved faster than Zane could comprehend. She struck with speed and precision, her movements flowing as though she had danced this fight 1,000 times before. Zane barely managed to duck under her first strike, her glowing energy blade swiping just above his head. He scrambled back, his heart racing. He had no idea how he was supposed to win this. Every time he tried to land a punch or a kick, She dodged effortlessly, her agility seemingly supernatural. "You'll have to do better than that, human," she teased, her voice barely above a whisper. Her confidence was infuriating. How could someone so poised and graceful be so frightening? Zane tried to catch his breath, trying to focus. He was a diplomat, he was good with words, with strategy, with negotiation, not combat. But he couldn't let that stop him. He had to think of something, anything. Then a thought hit him. The one thing he had over her, something he'd learned from human history, was unpredictability. Humans might not have the strength of the alien species he was up against, but they could think on their feet, adapt quickly. With a swift motion, Zane feinted to the left, forcing the woman to react. When she did, he quickly shifted to the right, sweeping his legs under hers in a low kick that sent her sprawling. The crowd gasped as she hit the ground with a surprised grunt. For a moment, there was silence. The woman's eyes widened, and Zane held his breath, wondering if he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. Then she laughed. It was a soft, musical laugh, more like a chuckle of admiration than anything else. She pushed herself up with ease, brushing the dirt from her armor. "I must admit, human, I underestimated you." Zane's heart skipped a beat. "Don't count me out just yet." Her smile widened and she stepped back, ready to continue the fight. "You have spirit," she said, her tone now filled with genuine respect. "But let's see if it's enough." Zane wiped sweat from his brow, ready for whatever came next. His mind raced, but one thing was clear. He wasn't about to back down. He had accepted the challenge, and now he had to prove that humans could hold their ground in a world full of alien power. The duel was far from over, but as the woman locked eyes with him again, Zane knew something had shifted. This wasn't just about a fight anymore. It was about respect, about proving that humans were capable of much more than anyone could imagine. And maybe, just maybe, it was about something else too, something deeper. The battle was just beginning. The clash of energy echoed across the arena, the sound of Zane's heart pounding in his chest almost louder than the impact of Arya's strikes. He had underestimated her. He had thought, foolishly, that this would be easy. But Arya wasn't just a skilled fighter. She was a force of nature, and Zane was barely keeping up. She moved with a fluid grace that made her seem untouchable, like a shadow darting between the flashes of glowing energy. Zane, on the other hand, was struggling to find his footing. His muscles were sore and his breath came in shallow gasps. He was no warrior. He was a diplomat, a negotiator. But right now, that didn't seem to matter. Arya's yellow eyes locked onto his, sharp and focused, a slight smirk playing at the corner of her lips. "Is that the best you've got, human?" she taunted, circling him like a predator. "You've barely laid a hand on me." Zane gritted his teeth. He wasn't about to back down, not after everything he'd risked to get here. The crowd surrounding them was going wild, their cheers and chants filling the air, but Zane's focus remained on Arya. There was something about her, something beyond her strength, that intrigued him. In the midst of their fight, he couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't just testing his strength. She was testing him, his resolve, his ability to adapt. The thought gave him an odd sense of clarity. He couldn't win this with sheer force. He had to outsmart her, think outside the box, the way humans did best. Zane's mind raced. He remembered the way she moved earlier, how fast she was, how gracefully she dodged every strike. He needed to change tactics. Instead of trying to land a blow, he needed to trick her into making a mistake. Suddenly, he feinted left, hopping to catch her off guard. Arya's reflexes were lightning quick, and she immediately moved to block. But that was exactly what he wanted. Without warning, Zane pivoted and swung his leg low, sweeping the ground beneath her. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Arya's eyes widened in surprise as she stumbled back, her foot catching on the edge of his kick. She was fast, but not fast enough. The unexpected move threw her off balance, and she hit the ground with a sharp thud. The crowd went silent. Zane stood there, chest heaving, trying to catch his breath. His heart raced, not just from the physical exertion but from the adrenaline coursing through his veins. Had he really just done it? He glanced down at Arya, who was slowly getting back up, a look of amusement, and maybe something else in her eyes. "Well, well," she said, brushing herself off, a slow smile curling on her lips. "I didn't expect that." Zane's mouth went dry. She had this way about her, this ability to disarm him with a smile, even in the middle of a fight. And somehow, in the midst of their heated duel, Zane realized something that made his heart race for an entirely different reason. Arya wasn't just a challenge, she was more than that. There was something about her, the way she moved, the way she fought, the way she seemed to see through him, that pulled him in. It was like she was inviting him into her world, one where strength and respect were earned, not given. She stood to her full height, her gaze never leaving his. "Not bad, human," she said, her voice softer now, almost approving. "You're learning." Zane's heart skipped a beat at the unexpected compliment, but he wasn't about to let his guard down, not yet. "I told you, I don't give up easily." Arya's smile widened, a flicker of admiration flashing in her eyes. "I've noticed." For a moment the playful tension between them shifted. There was no longer just the fight, no longer just the challenge. Something else had slipped into the space between them, something subtle but undeniable. Respect. Maybe. But there was also something more, something Zane wasn't sure he had the courage to name. The duel continued, but now Zane was fighting with a new sense of purpose. He no longer just wanted to win, he wanted to earn her respect. With every move, every twist, he could feel the connection between them growing stronger. It wasn't just about physical strength anymore. It was about pushing each other to become more than they were. Arya was faster now, more focused, as if she had decided to take him seriously. Her strikes became more powerful, and for every one of Zane's moves she countered with grace and precision. But there was something in her eyes now, something different. She was no longer just testing him. She was challenging him in a way that went beyond the fight itself. "You're stubborn," she said, her voice still playful but edged with something warmer. "I like that." Zane couldn't help but smile, despite his exhaustion. "You make it hard not to be." They fought on, each movement an exchange, a dance that they were learning as they went. Zane was starting to feel it, a rhythm, a flow. He wasn't just reacting anymore, he was anticipating, adapting. And much to his surprise, he was starting to think that maybe, just maybe, he could win this. Not because he was stronger or faster, but because he was learning how to outthink her. As the duel wore on, Arya's energy seemed to shift. Her movements became more deliberate, less playful. She wasn't holding back anymore. Zane could see it in the intensity of her gaze, the way she focused on him with a renewed determination. But there was something else in her eyes, something that made his heart flutter in his chest. Beneath the sharp focus, beneath the challenge, Zane saw something softer, a vulnerability. She had underestimated him at first, but now he could see that she was giving him everything she had. And that made the fight, this strange, unexpected connection between them, mean so much more than it ever could have. "You've come a long way, human," Arya said, panting slightly, her voice quieter now. "I didn't think you had it in you." Zane caught his breath, his mind racing. "I've only just started." Arya's eyes flickered, and for a brief moment, the playful challenge that had defined their fight seemed to melt away. It was just the two of them, standing in the center of the arena, caught in a moment where neither of them was sure what would come next. Zane took a deep breath, realizing that, for the first time in this fight, it wasn't about winning or losing. It was about something else entirely, something neither of them had expected. Something that, if he was honest with himself, had been there all along. And just like that, the duel no longer felt like a contest. It felt like the beginning of something far more complicated and far more exciting. The arena had grown quieter as the duel between Zane and Arya stretched on. The alien crowd, which had once been so eager, now seemed to hold their breath, watching in rapt attention as the two fighters continued to clash. Zane's body ached. each movement feeling heavier than the last. His breaths came in ragged gasps, but there was something new in his chest, something deeper than exhaustion. It wasn't just about winning anymore. The fight had transformed into something else. The more Zane sparred with Arya, the more he realized that this wasn't just a contest of strength, it was a test of wills, of character. She had thrown him into the deep end from the beginning, but in the last few moments, Zane could sense that something had changed between them. There was a respect in her eyes now. And maybe, just maybe, there was something more. He barely dodged another strike from Arya, the flash of her glowing blade grazing his arm. He stumbled back, his heart racing, but there was no fear in his chest now, only determination. "You're good," he panted, wiping the sweat from his brow. "But I'm not done yet." Arya's eyes flashed with something more than amusement, something like admiration. She stepped back, circling him slowly, her eyes locked onto his. "You've gotten better, human," she said, her voice lighter than before. "I thought you would break long before now, but you're still standing." Zane couldn't help but grin through his exhaustion. "I told you, humans don't give up easily." Arya's smile softened, and for a brief moment, Zane saw something vulnerable in her eyes, something that made her seem less like the fierce, untouchable warrior and more like, well, a person. The playful glint that had always been there was still there, but it was tempered with something warmer, something that tugged at his heart. "You're stronger than I gave you credit for," Arya said quietly, her tone almost gentle. "Not just physically, but mentally. I think I misjudged you." Zane met her gaze, his breath still heavy. "I think you're starting to see what humans are capable of." The moment stretched, the intensity between them thickening. For a heartbeat, everything seemed to freeze: Zane, Arya, and the entire arena. The energy between them wasn't just about the fight anymore. There was something more, something real, pulsing in the air. The crowd around them began to cheer again, the tension breaking as the fight resumed. Arya dashed forward with lightning speed, her blade crackling with energy. Zane instinctively ducked, feeling the rush of wind from her attack just above his head. But he was ready this time. As she swung again, Zane sidestepped, his body moving on instinct. He grabbed her wrist as she passed, using her momentum to twist her around and bring her to the ground. The impact made the crowd gasp, and for a brief moment, Zane was on top, holding her down. Arya's eyes widened in surprise, but she didn't struggle. Instead, she stared up at him, breathing heavily, a small, impressed smile tugging at her lips. "I told you I'm not giving up," Zane said, his voice low but filled with determination. He wasn't sure how much longer he could keep going, but he wasn't about to lose now, not when they were so close to something he hadn't expected. Not when he was starting to understand her, starting to see the woman beneath the warrior. Arya's gaze softened as she looked up at him. There was no teasing now, no mocking smile. She was simply looking at him as if she was seeing him in a new light. "You're stubborn," she said with a breathless laugh. "I like that." Zane's heart skipped a beat. He had been trying so hard to win her respect, to show her that humans weren't weak, that they could stand tall alongside the strongest of beings. But now, in this moment, it felt like something more was shifting between them. She wasn't just challenging him, she was respecting him. "Yeah, well," Zane said, leaning down slightly, his face inches from hers. "Humans can be stubborn when they need to be." Arya's eyes flickered, and for a moment there was a strange quietness between them. It wasn't awkward, though. It was something else. Something that Zane couldn't quite name, but he felt it. It made his heart race in a different way. "You're not so bad, human," Arya said softly, her voice almost teasing, but there was something deeper in her words. "Maybe I'll keep you around for a little while longer." Zane smiled, relieved that he wasn't about to lose the fight, or himself, in this strange challenge. But the words she said lingered in the air, and he realized something. This wasn't just a duel anymore. It wasn't about winning or losing. It wasn't about who was stronger, faster, or better. It was about them, two beings from different worlds, pushing each other to be better, to see each other in ways no one else ever had. Zane extended his hand to help her up, and Arya took it without hesitation. As she rose, they stood there for a moment, facing each other, both of them breathing heavily but with a new understanding between them. She didn't pull away from him, and he didn't back down either. "I think we're done here," Zane said, his voice a little more playful now, a smile creeping across his face. "Unless you want to keep going." Arya's smile mirrored his, the earlier intensity between them shifting into something lighter, something softer. "You're lucky I'm in a good mood, human," she said, her voice teasing once again, but this time there was no malice, just warmth. "I'll let you off the hook for now." Zane chuckled, the tension finally easing from his shoulders. "I think you might have miscalculated that. You're starting to like me, aren't you?" Arya raised an eyebrow, her smile never fading. "Don't get ahead of yourself, Earthling, but I'll admit, you've earned my respect." Zane felt a surge of warmth in his chest. Respect. It was more than he had expected, more than he had hoped for when he first walked into this strange arena. And yet, standing there with her, amidst the echoes of a cheering crowd, Zane realized that what they had just gone through was something he would never forget. The fight had been hard, harder than anything he had ever experienced, but it had opened his eyes to something more. And now, as Arya's gaze softened and she stepped a little closer to him, Zane couldn't help but wonder if this was only the beginning of the duel, of the challenge, and maybe of something more. The dust of the arena settled as the crowd's excitement simmered down. Zane and Arya stood facing each other, sweat beading on their foreheads, both of them breathing hard. The duel had stretched longer than either had anticipated, and now, after what felt like an eternity, the tension between them was palpable. Zane's muscles burned with exhaustion. His limbs ached from the blows he had taken, the bruises already starting to form on his skin. But something had changed within him. The fight had pushed him beyond his limits, and he wasn't about to back down now, not when he had come this far, not when he finally understood what this was really about. Arya, on the other hand, didn't seem nearly as tired. Her posture was still strong, her eyes focused. She was a warrior, and she had tested him in every possible way. But now, Zane realized, it wasn't just about the physical strength they each had. It was about something deeper. There was a connection between them now, one that went beyond the fight, beyond the challenge. Something that had been building from the moment they first locked eyes. She wiped a streak of sweat from her brow, her violet skin shimmering under the arena's harsh light. Her breathing was steady, controlled, as if she had been to this kind of contest 1,000 times before. "You've earned my respect, human," she said, her voice still playful but with a hint of admiration in it. Zane could feel his heart racing as he took in her words. "I'm not done yet," he replied, his voice low but determined. He wasn't just fighting for respect anymore. He was fighting for something more, something that felt much bigger than the battle itself. Arya's lips quirked into a smile, and for the first time since they had started this duel, Zane saw something truly vulnerable in her eyes. It was a flicker of doubt, a shadow of something she hadn't let anyone see before, and it made his heart tighten in his chest. He wasn't the only one who had something to prove here. She stepped back, giving herself some space, her eyes never leaving his. "I didn't expect this," she admitted, her voice quieter than before. "I thought I would break you faster, but you've shown me something I didn't expect." Zane felt a surge of warmth in his chest, something that wasn't just admiration or respect, it was something more. "I guess you didn't get the memo. Humans don't give up. Not easily, anyway." Arya's smile widened, a spark of amusement flickering in her yellow eyes. "I think I've figured that out by now." She stood taller, her expression shifting back to that confident warrior stance. "But this fight is far from over. We're not done yet." Zane's smile faded, his body tensing. He had thought maybe, just maybe, they had reached the end. But Arya wasn't going to let this duel end until it had a true conclusion. She was a warrior through and she wouldn't stop until she had fully tested him. And if Zane was being honest with himself, he didn't want it to end either. He wanted to prove to her, no, to himself, that he was more than just the diplomat who had walked into this arena a few hours ago. "All right," Zane said, squaring his shoulders. "Let's do this." The final round began without warning. Arya lunged first, moving so fast that Zane barely had time to react. But this time he was ready. As her energy blade sliced toward him, Zane ducked and sidestepped with a practiced fluidity he didn't know he had in him. The move was unplanned, instinctual, and it surprised even Arya. She spun on her heel, her yellow eyes wide with new respect, and for a moment Zane saw it clearly. This wasn't just a fight anymore. They had become partners in this strange, unspoken dance, testing each other, pushing each other beyond the limits. Arya came at him again, but this time Zane was ready. His heart pounded, but his mind was clear. As she swung, he grabbed her wrist, twisting it just enough to throw off her balance. The movement was quick, precise. He had learned from her how to use her own momentum against her. Before she could recover, he stepped in close, using his body weight to press her down into the dirt of the arena. They both hit the ground with a hard thud, but Zane didn't let go. Instead, he pinned her arms down with surprising force. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Zane's heart was thumping wildly in his chest, not just from the exertion but from the rush of emotions that suddenly flooded him. He had done it. He had won. Arya's yellow eyes locked with his, and for a moment there was no challenge in her gaze, just something raw, something real. A breathless laugh escaped her lips, followed by a soft sigh. "I didn't think you had it in you, human." Zane's grip loosened, his exhaustion catching up with him as he finally let her up. "I didn't either," he admitted, his voice hoarse. "But I guess I'm full of surprises." She stood up slowly, brushing herself off, her usual confident demeanor returning, but this time there was something softer in the way she looked at him. She didn't retreat. Instead, she reached out a hand to him. "You're not bad, Earthling," she said, her voice lighter now, almost playful again. "I think you've earned more than just my respect." Zane hesitated for a moment, but then he took her hand, pulling himself to his feet. As they stood there, facing each other, the roar of the crowd seemed far away, almost insignificant. There was only the two of them now, in this strange, unspoken moment that felt more real than anything that had come before. Arya's eyes softened as she met his gaze, her smile genuine for the first time since their fight had begun. I think I might actually be impressed, human." Zane smiled back, his heart swelling with something he hadn't expected to feel. "Well, I'm glad I could impress you." The duel had ended, and yet neither of them moved. They were standing there, close but not touching, their eyes locked, a silent understanding passing between them. It was more than just a fight now. It was the beginning of something else, something that neither of them could have predicted. Arya's hand lingered near his, her fingers brushing against his ever so slightly. The air between them was charged with something that wasn't just about winning or losing, it was about connection. And Zane realized, as he stood there with her, that this was only the beginning. What had started as a challenge had turned into something far more complicated and far more exciting than he ever could have imagined. The duel had ended, but in that moment Zane knew that whatever came next, he was ready. Ready for the next step, ready for whatever came with it, and maybe, even more than that, ready for Arya. The tension in the air was still thick, even though the duel had technically ended. Zane and Arya stood there, facing each other, both of them breathing heavily, yet not looking away. The crowd had quieted, their excited murmurs fading into a hushed anticipation. It felt as though the arena itself was holding its breath, waiting for the next moment to unfold. Zane could hardly believe what had just happened. He had fought and won against someone as fierce as Arya, someone who had pushed him to his limits and beyond. His body was sore, bruised from the fight, but there was something else that he couldn't quite shake, something that had shifted between them. Arya wiped the sweat from her brow, her violet skin glimmering in the light as she took a step back. Her eyes were still locked onto him, but there was something softer there now, something that wasn't there before. Gone was the cocky smirk, replaced by a look that seemed almost admiring. "You're different than I expected," Arya said, her voice quieter now, less challenging. "I thought I would break you easily, but you—" She paused, as if weighing her words carefully. "You didn't just fight for your life, you fought for respect." Zane's chest tightened at her words. He had come to Clyra thinking he would face a simple diplomatic mission, never imagining he would be thrown into an arena, fighting for his survival. But now, looking at Arya, really looking at her, he realized that this fight had been about more than just victory. It had been about proving something to her, proving that humans could stand on equal ground with beings like her. "Well, we humans don't back down easily," Zane replied, his voice low but confident, though his heart was still racing. "You challenged me, and I wasn't about to just roll over." Arya's lips curved into a genuine smile, the first real one she had shown him. It was like a light had shifted in her eyes. "No, you weren't," she said with a chuckle, her voice softening. "And that's what I respect." The words sent an unexpected warmth through Zane's chest. Respect. He had fought for it, and now, standing here, it felt like he had truly earned it. And yet, as Arya looked at him, the unspoken connection between them grew stronger. There was something else there too, something deeper than just mutual respect. It was something more. The crowd began to cheer again, but this time it was different. The applause wasn't just for the victor. It was for both of them, two beings from completely different worlds, coming together in this unexpected way. Arya stepped back, still eyeing Zane with that calculating gaze. "You've won, human, and I will honor my word. You've earned your freedom." She paused, her voice suddenly more serious. "But I would be lying if I said I wasn't curious about you, about your kind." Zane tilted his head, raising an eyebrow. "Curious? What do you mean?" Arya's expression shifted, becoming more contemplative. "You humans, you have this resilience, this fire that I've never seen before. I've fought many opponents, but none of them fought like you. Most would have given up long ago, but you kept going." Zane smiled, trying to hide the way her words made his chest swell. "We don't give up easily. It's kind of a human thing." She laughed softly, the sound like music in the air. "I'm beginning to see that, and I'm beginning to think that maybe, just maybe, there's more to humans than I thought." Zane felt a rush of excitement at her words. He wasn't sure if she meant anything beyond the obvious, but there was something in her tone, something in the way she was looking at him, that made his pulse quicken. Arya took a step closer, her presence overwhelming but not intimidating. "You're different from what I expected, Zane, and I don't think I've seen the last of you. In fact," she stopped, her eyes narrowing as she searched his face, "I think you might be useful to me." Zane frowned slightly, a little confused by her sudden change in tone. "Useful to you? For what?" Arya's smile grew mischievous, the playful glint back in her eyes. "Let's just say that Clyra has its own problems, problems that I could use someone like you for." Her voice dropped to a softer, more serious tone. "You've proven that you have more than just strength. You have the ability to think, to adapt. And in my world, that counts for a lot." Zane stared at her, unsure of how to respond. He had come to Clyra to negotiate a peaceful alliance, to build bridges between humans and the Clyrans, but now he was being offered something much different. Was she offering him something more than just a partnership? Was this a way for him to stay, to continue working with her, in ways he hadn't anticipated? "I'm not sure what you're getting at," Zane said slowly, his mind racing with possibilities. "But if it means I get to spend more time with you, I might be interested." Arya's eyes flickered with amusement, but there was something deeper there too, something that made Zane's heart race. "Careful, human. That kind of talk could get you into trouble." Zane stepped a little closer, his smile widening. "I like trouble." The look Arya gave him then was one of both surprise and something else, something like recognition. It was clear that neither of them was ready to call this moment anything other than what it was, an unexpected twist in their story. But as the moment lingered, neither of them wanted to step back. Not yet. Not when this strange, new connection had just begun to unfold. The arena began to clear out, the crowd slowly dispersing, but Zayn and Arya stayed there, standing face to face, an unspoken promise hanging in the air. The duel had been their starting point, but where it led, neither of them knew. All Zayn knew was that, somehow, in the midst of this strange alien world, he had found something unexpected. And as Arya met his gaze, the challenge was clear. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Two beings from different worlds, united by the fight, by the challenge, and by something neither of them could have predicted. The days after the duel passed in a blur of strange excitement. Zayn found himself still thinking about Arya long after the fight had ended, long after the crowd had dispersed, and the arena had fallen silent. Their time together, the intensity of their battle, and the unexpected moments that followed had left an indelible mark on him. He hadn't expected to form any kind of connection with an alien warrior, certainly not one as powerful and intimidating as Arya. Yet there was something about her that drew him in, a complexity he couldn't quite define. She was fierce, yet there were moments when her guard dropped, and Zayn saw a side of her that was more vulnerable than she let on. It was in the way she looked at him sometimes, when her playful teasing gave way to something deeper. He couldn't stop thinking about their last words together, the way she had looked at him with a mixture of respect and something that felt like, dare he say it, affection. Zayn sat in the quiet of his quarters, the soft hum of the ship's engines a constant background sound. He had been assigned temporary quarters on Clyra's capital city ship, a luxurious transport that was meant to take him back to Earth once the formalities were done. But right now, Earth seemed a long way off, and the only thing on Zayn's mind was the woman who had challenged him, and who had, in a strange way, changed him. His thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock on the door. He stood, walking over and opening it, only to find Arya standing there, her posture relaxed but her eyes focused, serious in a way that was unusual for her. "You're a hard person to find, human," she said, her voice low and playful, but there was an unmistakable edge to it. Zayn smiled at her, despite the flutter in his chest. "I guess I've been hiding." She raised an eyebrow, stepping into his quarters without waiting for an invitation. "Hiding? You? I'd say you're trying to avoid something." Zayn closed the door behind her, watching as she glanced around the room with interest. There was no denying the fact that her presence made the air feel electric, her beauty, her strength, her confidence. It was all wrapped up in that unspoken challenge that hung between them. "Trying to avoid something, huh?" Zayn said, leaning against the desk. "What would that be?" Arya turned to face him, her eyes locking onto his with a gleam that made his heart race. "The inevitable," she said simply. Zayn frowned. "Inevitable, what do you mean?" Arya's expression softened, her usual bravado slipping just a little. She took a few steps closer, her eyes searching his face as if trying to gauge something deeper. "You know, I'm not always what I seem, human. I'm not just the warrior you fought in the arena. I'm the daughter of one of Clyra's most powerful families. I'm expected to be something, someone else entirely, to play a role." Zayn could see the shift in her, the way she suddenly seemed more vulnerable, more human than the fierce fighter he had faced only days ago. He straightened, stepping toward her. "Arya," he began softly, his voice barely more than a whisper, "you don't have to be anyone other than who you are. I've seen who you are." Her gaze flickered, and for the briefest moment, Zayn could see the wall that she had built up start to crack. But she quickly composed herself, masking it with a cool smile. "And who is that, exactly?" Zayn chuckled, his heart racing from the moment's tension. "I think I've got a pretty good idea, and I think it's a lot more than the perfect Clyran warrior everyone expects you to be. You're more than that." Arya studied him for a long moment, her eyes softening in a way that made Zayn's heart skip. "You're right. I don't always want to play the part that's been chosen for me. I've been looking for something more, something real. But it's hard when everyone around you expects you to be this symbol, this perfect fighter. It gets lonely." Zane's chest tightened as he reached out, gently brushing a strand of silver hair from her face. "You don't have to be alone. You've got me, and I don't care about the expectations. I care about you." Arya's eyes met his, and for the first time the playful challenge was gone. There was something deeper between them now, something that neither of them had expected to find. The vulnerability was there, raw and unspoken, yet undeniably real. Her voice was softer now, almost a whisper. "You really think that?" Zane nodded, his hand still resting near her cheek, his thumb brushing gently against her skin. "I do, more than anything." Arya's lips parted slightly, and for a moment the world outside seemed to disappear. Zane could feel the pull between them, the magnetic connection that had been building ever since that first duel, ever since the first time she had looked at him with those piercing eyes. Slowly, cautiously, Arya closed the distance between them, her hand resting lightly on his chest. Zane's heart hammered in his chest as she stepped into him, the warmth of her body radiating against his. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The air was thick with anticipation, the unspoken emotions between them heavier than anything else. Then Arya tilted her head, her lips curving into that familiar, teasing smile. "You're not bad for a human," she said, her voice light but full of meaning. Zane couldn't hold back his smile, his hand moving to gently pull her closer. "I try to be a little more than not bad," he said, his voice teasing but sincere. And just as the world around them faded into nothing, Arya leaned in, her lips brushing his in a kiss that was soft, tentative, yet filled with more emotion than Zane could have imagined. The kiss deepened as she wrapped her arms around him, pulling him closer, and he responded, his own arms wrapping around her waist, holding her as though this moment might slip away if he didn't. When they finally pulled apart, both of them breathless, Zane rested his forehead against hers, a smile playing on his lips. "So, what now?" Arya's eyes twinkled with that same mischievous glint, but there was something new there too, something warmer. "Now, we see where this goes." Zane smiled, his heart light in a way he hadn't felt before. Whatever had started between them had begun as a challenge, a fight. But now it was something more, something real. And for the first time in a long time, Zane was excited to see what the future would bring. Whatever it was, he knew he wouldn't be facing it alone. And that was the greatest victory of all. The following days were a blur of unexpected changes. Zane had come to Clyra expecting to negotiate and leave, to return to Earth with new knowledge and agreements to help build relationships between the two worlds. But now, as he stood beside Arya, watching the alien city below them from the edge of a high balcony, he realized how little he had truly known what he wanted. Clyra, the heart of the alien empire, sprawled below them, its glowing spires stretching toward the twin moons above. The city was alive, vibrant, with a rhythm all its own. But as Zane looked at it, he wasn't thinking about trade deals or negotiations anymore. His thoughts were on something, or rather someone, completely different. Arya stood next to him, her silhouette bathed in the soft light of the evening. She had removed her armor earlier and now wore simple clothes that suited her, casual, relaxed, but still carrying an air of power. Her violet skin seemed to glow in the fading light, and when she looked at him, her yellow eyes filled with a quiet intensity. Zane's heart skipped a beat. "Never thought I'd be standing here like this," Zane said, breaking the comfortable silence between them. Arya turned her head slightly, glancing at him with a smirk. "Never thought you'd be here at all, human," she replied, her voice light but carrying a deeper meaning. "You're full of surprises." Zane chuckled, but his gaze softened as he looked at her. "Yeah, well, you're not the only one who's full of surprises." They had both been through a lot. The fight, the moments of doubt, and the quiet understanding that had begun to blossom between them. Zane wasn't sure when it had happened, but somewhere along the way, the duel had stopped being just about winning. It had become a journey, a discovery of who they were, what they could be, and what they meant to each other. Arya stepped closer to him, her eyes searching his face, her expression no longer guarded but something else, something real. "Zane," she began, her voice softening. "I know I said I'd let you go after the duel, but I don't think I'm ready to let you walk away just yet." Zane's heart tightened and he took a step closer, his eyes meeting hers. "Arya," his voice was gentle, uncertain, but full of emotion. He had no idea what was coming next, but he was ready for it. "What are you saying?" Arya didn't answer right away. Instead, she stepped up to the railing, looking out over the city, her thoughts distant. The wind swept through her silver hair, and for a moment she looked every bit the warrior she was. But then she turned back to him, her eyes softer than they had been in their fight. "I've spent my whole life being the daughter of one of Clyra's most powerful families. I've been trained for battle, trained for war, trained to lead. But what they never told me was that being strong isn't just about fighting. It's about knowing when to let someone in." Zane's chest tightened at her words. He could feel the weight of her vulnerability, and for a moment he didn't know what to say. What could he say? But Arya continued, her voice steady but laced with emotion. "You came here as a diplomat. You came here to negotiate, to make peace. But in doing so, you taught me something. You taught me that not all battles need to be fought with weapons or words. Some of them are fought with trust, with connection." Her words hung in the air, and for a moment there was only the sound of the wind and the distant hum of the city below. Zane took a deep breath, his heart racing as he stepped forward, closing the space between them. He gently placed a hand on her shoulder, his thumb brushing lightly against her skin. "I don't know what the future holds for us, Arya," Zane said quietly, his voice sincere. "But I know I don't want to walk away from this. I don't want to walk away from you." Arya looked up at him, and for the first time since their duel, she wasn't the strong, unapproachable warrior. She was just Arya, a woman who had been forced to fight for everything. And yet, here she was, standing in front of him, letting her guard down in a way Zane had never expected. Without a word, she reached up and touched his face, her fingers brushing softly against his cheek. The touch sent a shiver through him, and his heart surged. He had never imagined that he would be here with her in this moment, but now that he was, he didn't want it to end. "I've spent my life thinking I had to control everything," Arya said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But with you, I don't feel like I have to. You make me feel like I can finally let go." Zane's breath caught in his throat. "Arya." He didn't know what else to say. All the words he had prepared, had hoped to say, suddenly felt unnecessary, because there in her eyes he saw everything he needed to know. She was offering him something real, something that didn't have to be defined by labels or expectations. Arya leaned in slowly, her gaze never leaving his. Zane met her halfway, and when their lips touched, it was soft, tentative, like they were both still uncertain, yet unwilling to pull away. The kiss deepened, and Zane felt the world around them fade away. There was no crowd, no arena, no mission. There was only the two of them standing on the edge of something new, something thrilling. When they finally pulled apart, their foreheads resting together, both of them breathless, Zane smiled softly. "So, what now?" he asked, his voice light but filled with hope. Arya's smile was full of warmth, and when she looked at him, it was with a sincerity that made Zane's heart skip. "Now we figure it out," she said simply. "Together." Zane nodded, his heart light as he realized that, for the first time since arriving on Clyra, he didn't have to have all the answers. He didn't need to know what came next. He just needed to take the next step with her. And as they stood there, looking out at the city below, Zane knew one thing for certain. No matter what the future held, he was ready to face it. With Arya by his side, there was no challenge too big, no unknown too terrifying. Together, they could face anything.